So, Simon, how long have you known Dave?
If I'm not mistaken, I first met Dave, it should be 1993. That was in the month of June. He had arranged to come and see me together with John Singleton, Loxley Ford. I met him at Victoria Falls Airport. Then we drove from Falls to stay. That was the first time I met him. So that should be 1993, I'm sure.
And you've continued to have a relationship.
And then for us to start building relationship, when we met in Hwange, he was interested to see where I live and the people I fellowship with. We went at a church in number 2 Kolari. Because Hwange is divided into mine compounds. So we went at number 2 church where we had served together with him. Then we made arrangements that we should meet in UK that very year, 1993. Actually, this was made by Ron Davis, who was a missionary in Zimbabwe, running Global Lifeline Literature. So he's the one who made that arrangement with me, that we meet in an official way in UK. That very year, I was in UK already, invited by a friend of mine again, Don Double is an evangelist. I had attended this camp meeting. So after the camp meeting, we had a meeting with David Cunningham, Ron Davis, and others in UK. And that was the first time we started to discuss about working together. And that's the time when I met David.
And the relationship has grown?
Yeah, since that time, since we have been meeting regular times. When we were still connected with UK people, we had meetings, I'm sure, about twice. The first one was at Margate. There is a town near Kenty in UK. The second one was around London, I forget the place. But it was a meeting place where the community church meets. In those meetings, we were discussing about ways of building our relationship. But things, of course, do not start in a day. Although we talked and agreed, it did not materialize at one time. But communication was kept until we made the arrangement. Sure, that should be made by Dave now. He made the arrangements to invite us to come here in USA. And then that is where we began to build our relationship with an agreement, which means the first relationship did not succeed. Although we had met at Hwange, we had met twice in UK, although we had talked and made agreements, but the first one did not work. But now we began to renew our relationship when we came here at Lanco Christian Center. I just forget the year now. So that should be about, it's not 1995, should be 96. That's when we came here now to strengthen our relationship. So from there, relationship has grown. Because we base our facts that working together is not a matter of written statements where you agree that we have agreed we'll work together and yet your hearts are not knit together. So the first area was to knit our hearts, to knit our spirit, his spirit and my spirit, his heart and my heart, that I would feel I'm meeting a brother whom I'll work together with. I remember for me, I asked him if he would allow me to visit him. So in 95, I succeeded to come here in America. That's Ranko Kukamunga in this church. I'm sure I spent some days, I just forget how many days, but for some days I spent staying with him at his house, coming for the meetings. I shared a bit in the church. Those were days and times of developing relationship between him and myself, which included others, of course, later.
And so, what is RIM? Tell me what you feel RIM is.
Although I feel RIM, in the name, of course, it means Hwange International Ministry. That's the meaning of it. Why it is called international? Because it involves everybody from every part of the world. But how I understand it, it reveals the Father's heart, the heart of God Himself. We know that God is love, and RIM is based on loving one another. God cares, and RIM is based on caring one another. God wants to see children living properly, prospering in their life. This is what RIM is based upon. Because when love has been built together, you love one another, eventually you care for one another. And then you uplift one another in what you are doing, so that each individual can be able to accomplish what God has called him to do. You know, alone, you cannot do much. But when two people come together and agree on something, and ask of the Lord and give themselves to it, then something will come out of that. Because the Bible even says, two are better than one. And the rope which is tied in three cords cannot be broken. So when people work together in the Spirit and loving one another, caring one another, there is strength there. Difficulties may come, others will uplift another person. Then each one will be committed to fulfill what God has called him to do. Those are the areas I can describe RIM.
And what does being a part of RIM mean to you or to the work in Zimbabwe?
Well, to me, it has meant, remember the Bible, in the Bible, when Moses and the children of Israel were going to enter the land of Canaan, they met the Amalekites on the way. And there was war between Israel and the Amalekites. Joshua was the leader on the army side. Moses was the leader of Israel as a whole. But it happened, Moses realized that when his hands are lifted up, the Amalekites would be overcome. When his hands were laid down, Israel would be overcome. So he realized there is power in uplifting his hands without going down. That when they were lifted up continuously, then the world would be overcome. So I view this, that working together in RIM, we uplift one another's hands, so that this other one will not fail to do what God has called him to do. So RIM to me is lifting up my hands, so that I do not fail to do what God has called me to do by working together in that way. It's how I call it, I say it.
Tell me about some of the work that you do in Zimbabwe.
Well, as a leader of the church, I have done church planting, of course, for the years I've been in ministry. I've raised leaders who are pastors who are looking after the church. We have raised church elders who are looking after the church. And we have got many ministries within the church. We have a ministry of music of praise and worship. We have a ministry for Bible school teaching. We have a ministry for missionary vision teaching. We have a ministry to care for widows and orphans, ministry for Sunday school. All these ministries have leaders who are doing them. So my work actually now is to bring those leaders together and develop them so that they grow, each one, in the knowledge of what God has called them to do, and see them succeeding in their call. It is whereby the church begins to grow. So this is basically what I'm doing now. In doing that, I bring them together once a year. We've got what we call leadership seminar, where they meet. Dave comes to minister in those meetings. The aim there is to build and establish leaders so that they can carry the work which God has called them to do and carry to go forward. This is one area of ministry I'm doing. Then for the extension of the work now, we have established a missionary program. By that we started training people who are born again, filled by the Spirit, and are willing to see the Great Commission fulfilled in other areas where the gospel is needed. So now we bring those people together and teach them the Word of God, basing mainly on the Great Commission. So that every year they go out to plant churches in new areas where we've not yet started any church, and in some areas where people have not yet heard about Christ. Because when you're in town like this, you can think that everybody has heard about Christ. But there are people in remote areas who have not yet heard about Jesus Christ. So my work is to develop these leaders. Then they become involved in extending the mission work to other areas where people have not yet heard the gospel. Then secondly, I have outreach ministries, reaching other countries besides Zimbabwe. Because in Zimbabwe, God has blessed us. People have been saved, we have leaders, many members in the church. So for me to circulate at one place, then I've got to open doors for the teams to go out also. I have connections in Namibia, I have connections in Zambia, connections in Tanzania, connections in Malawi, and in Swaziland. So my aim is to reach each country in the South African region. Then after that, go forward to see the work growing. So my work basically now is developing leaders and then train missionaries who carry out the gospel. I don't stay myself, I also go in those areas I've mentioned for outreach. Knowing that where I have gone, my children are going to follow and extend the work which I started. I think this has all to do with mission work. This is what I'm basically doing now. And we are seeing souls getting saved. Like last year, our teams, we had sent a team to Cholocho, we sent a team to Lupani, we sent another team to Gogwe on the eastern part. And we sent another team at Nyami, near Kariba, the most remote area. We sent teams. So last year alone we had more than 200 souls who came to the Lord. Then we planted new